welcome to the first ever Intellectual Abattoir podcast. Very impromptu. Woke up this morning, didn't know I was going to do this, decided to do it. Messaged a couple of people. Come back to me and said I can do it, but not now, not today. One person I got hold of was the great Don BISWAS, a stand-up comedian who I've known as long as I've been doing it. I mean, I met him in one of my, before I'd done 10 gigs, I'd met him, and I'll give a little bit of a brief rundown of our history together. Not, you know. But anyway, he came on. Thanks so much. I appreciate Don for doing it. If you want to book Don as a comedian, you can get hold of him through Adam at arushoflaughter.co.uk on all the social media, on all the socials. All the socials, Charlotte, all the socials. He's on at Don BISWAS Comedy. Chat to him generally. He was one of the first people I met that was like, called himself a conspiracy theorist. Didn't use it as a derogatory term. Interesting guy. He's got a couple of like not medical, it's like ADHD, dyspraxia, and Asperger's. And I touched upon, did you think that was a reason you could, I don't want to fucking, well, am I going to do this now? This is like watching the analysis of the game before they show you the highlights on Match of the Day, right? Anyway, I tried not to interrupt him, but anyone who knows me from my other podcasts will know I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy. But anyway, here we go with the great Don BISWAS. Let's get into it. Hello, here he is on the Skype machine, Donald J. BISWAS.
How's it going, man? You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, Don. I was thinking, we've known each other not that well, but for a fucking long time now, man. Because I remember when I started doing stand-up. Don's a stand-up, by the way, as we both are. I started doing stand-up in about 2009. And I think you'd been going a bit longer than me. And when I came onto the scene, you was like the cut above the open mic. You were probably still doing open mics, but you were doing them at better places than I was, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I've been going 17 years.
Right.
But I've only been taking it seriously since last week. So
yeah,
the reason 17 years.
Yeah, 17 years. But the main thing, I always remember this, because I say this, but at the start, I always found you a very generous person. Because stand up, especially when you're all crabs in a bucket at the beginning, you can be very people can be a bit not territorial as such, but a little bit sort of like mean. But I always found you were very generous and supportive, and I think it's maybe got a bit more like that now. I guess we sound like old timers. Maybe I'm exaggerating.
Yeah,
but back then, do you think it seemed a little bit more cutthroat?
I think it's actually more cutthroat now. Because there's fewer gigs now. So I don't tend to hang around with other comedians. But what I've been told by secondhand stories is that it's all fine. Most comedians are lovely anyway. But obviously, it's harder to climb the ladder. And maybe you have to do a little bit more to climb that ladder. Yeah. You know, a little bit more, which may be unethical, but generally most people are nice.
Well, you struck me as one of the nicer ones. I'm not just saying that because you're on here. That's just something I wanted to say. So anyway, that's probably leads me. I've got a little bit of it in there. So you say you don't really mix with that many comedians, because I would say, Don, that from the first time, one of the first times I met you, you were very out of the closet about your conspiratorial leanings.
Yeah.
So I would say, it's interesting. So before we get into sort of like how I want to talk, because I think this either more people are, because I was always a bit like you, but I was a bit shy of coming out of the closet for fear of, well, you can meet, I think when you come out of the closet, you can meet resistance, you can meet hostility sometimes, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really care.
No.
To be fair, I was back in the day, I just got diagnosed with mild Asperger's, so I was quite oblivious to everything. I just spoke my mind, whether that was for better or worse. So luckily at that time...
That's actually an interesting point then. So do you think that you're kind of... Because like I said, you talk about it in your act, you're dyspraxic?
Yeah, dyspraxic, Asperger's and ADHD. And I talk about hints of conspiracies as well.
You do talk about, I'm saying, but do you think the mixture of ADHD... and the Asperger's means that do you think that's why you didn't give a shit about coming out and saying to people, yeah, I believe this stuff?
Yeah, I think a lot of people with autism do have a habit of they can't hide themselves. They have a habit of telling the truth. This is not for everyone. And so I just told people what I believed in conspiracy theory wise. Obviously, nothing malicious.
No, of course not.
Just
That's
what I
the thing
believe
with,
in.
and the thing is, I want to just get this off the bat as well, because the thing, I don't know if you agree with me. What crazes me, or what sort of find infuriating, is obviously there are a lot of beliefs or thoughts that could come under the umbrella of conspiracy theory. Now, obviously, but what people do is they say, oh. So I'll use you as an example. Just use you as the sort of argument's sake. They go, "Oh yeah, Don's a conspiracy theorist, so that means he believes in that COVID was a sort of like exaggerated crisis to upwardly travel lots of wealth, and he also believes in Bigfoot." It's like they're not all the same, are they?
There's millions of them. It's just another individual news story, and it's up for you to decide whether you think it's true or not. So people are very closed-minded. Take every conspiracy theory individually, then judge it on that basis.
Exactly, but people go, "Oh, he's a conspiracy theorist, therefore he thinks the Earth's flat. He believes in chemtrails. And you might believe in some of these or none of these, but it's not like a normie just believes in none of them. I call them normies, and that's not my term. That's what
exactly.
Yeah, but they if you don't even question anything, you are as gullible as someone that believes everything, you know. And I think the truth is,
100%.
Yeah, you pick and choose, and you go, well, I do think COVID was this, or I do think JFK or 9/11 was an inside job, but I don't think the Earth's flat. I don't think there are lizard people on a hollowed out space station that is the moon. But so when was your first? What was the first one where you thought? What was the sort of light bulb moment with you when you sort of thought, do you know what? I think I believe this non-conventional belief. What was your first one that opened your eyes?
When I started getting interested when I was 18, I saw this journalist called John Ronson.
Yeah.
Brilliant journalist.
Yeah.
I think he had a book called Seeker Rulers the World, and he was talking about the Bilderberg Group, which I talked about in my set. For those who don't know, it's a secret society created in a hotel in Holland in the early 50s, where a lot of the elites meet up. And when I mean that, people like in the past, David Cameron, George Osborne, CEO of companies and so forth. And obviously, they discuss their future, how to shape the global society. It's not a conspiracy as such. It's business as usual. And that's when I started getting interested through John Ronson, did the Channel 4 documentary talking about various conspiracies like the Bilderberg Group, talking about Bohemian Grove.
He actually infiltrated Bohemian Grove with Alex Jones, didn't he?
Yeah, it was just mental.
Yeah.
And if anything, at that time, I just found them entertaining. So
that's the truth. It's actually interesting. My first time where I started to be aware of conspiracy theories, other than like the crazy loony ones, and I must admit, as I've got older, I've got a bit more. I wouldn't say religious, but I'm a lot more tolerant of belief and theism. But back then, I was like a hardcore atheist, and I thought like I would have said the thing that opened my eyes because obviously at the school I went to, we sang hymns in class, and it was, all about Jesus, water of life.
Same here as well.
Yeah, and then they teach you RE, right? And then they go, oh, yeah, there's like Hindu, for example. And I'm like, what? Yeah, so they teach us about Hinduism in RE. And I'd be like, what? There's more than... But you told us... You told us that God and Jesus made the world and we have Christmas, and now you're telling me there are other people that think something else. That's the ultimate conspiracy when you realise that the religion has been sort of thrust. I wasn't thrust upon me. I went to a shitbag school. You know what I mean? But it was like this sort of like believes in Jesus and there are other people in the world that believe different things. And it's like, well, and then you sort of think, well, that at a very young age, that made me question everything I was told. I felt very betrayed and lied to, actually. But the time when I sort of got into a specific modern conspiracy, if you like, I also was John Ronson, and he had a show called For the Love Of, and I saw one where he had fake moon landing guests on. Did you ever see that?
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah.
That was when I was like, and I remember I was like a stoner student, and I just had this my mind was blown on.
But the thing is, for me, it wasn't just John Ronson. I'm not the cleverest person in the world. So when I was 18, I was too thick to study maths, so I switched to sociology A level. Mm-hmm. And then I learned we're talking about religion there, how it controls us. And now maybe it's not so religion, but it's like mainstream media, our governments and stuff, big social institutions. And I learned they tried to control the message. So you don't hear so much about the message I want to see, which is socialism. You don't hear about feminism, Marxism. You don't even hear viewpoints from the other side as well, for more right-wing thinkers. So, and that's where intertwined with conspiracies like that. obviously the mainstream media is there just to help the top 1%, the corporations. So they don't want to. They only want one type of message.
It's interesting there. You just mentioned the term right wing. Now, tell me if this is way off base, but I find that as a white man, any sort of conspiracy or questioning even something, if you want to look at the data around something like climate change, you just get labelled as right wing. Do you think that you sort of like might dodge that particular? Do you ever get that, or not because of your ethnicity? Do you think that's something you don't have to worry about as much, or maybe another reason you could have come out a bit earlier?
Maybe, but I think I did the Edinburgh show last year called "The Revolution a Little Bit Disorganized," and it got some really lovely reviews. The only bad review it got is because they liked the jokes and stuff, but they hated the fact that I came out as anti-lockdown. So. Yeah. I freely admit I got a lot of stick for going on anti-lockdown marches and stuff like that. And and for you as a white man, what I failed to notice is that they try to lump all the anti-lockdown marchers as one group of people when there's groups of all ethnicity. Yeah. So yeah, that's the only time where I've got a bit of backlash.
Don't you think it's mad, Don? You know that famous picture of all the Nazis saluting and there's the one guy with his arms folded? And everyone was like, oh, this guy was the only one on the right side of history, be this guy. And the same people that used to post that meme, they're the ones that are like digging you out for going on an I just find it, I mean, and this has nothing to do, this is why I don't think the truth or beliefs like this should be politicised. I don't think it's left or right wing to believe in lockdown or not.
A lot of my left wing friends went on the marches as well, anti-lockdown.
When I was growing up, left wing was the wing, if you like, the faction of freedom, individual liberty, and fascism was the bend the knee and do as you're told or else. And do you not think that the trick the devil's done is he's flipped that now?
Yeah, I think so. Whenever you think of right wing, you think of Mary Whitehouse telling you to censor yourself back in the 80s. Yeah, conservative. And then when you saw left wing, you saw people on CND marches and you could say what you want. But to a certain extent, I think it doesn't matter. Because the one thing the right wing are obsessed with, and conspiracy theory-wise as well, is woke culture. You can say what you want these days. You just can't be bigoted, obviously. And so, yeah. But, yeah, I think maybe the right wing do portray themselves as more free speech, maybe.
Well, I think that's crazy, but I think it's like a complete flip, because you had the conservative who were right-wing comedians back in the day, late 70s, your Bernard Mannings and these sorts of Mike Reed. Because I don't know how he sort of got away with it. I see clips of Mike Reed now come up on TikTok, and they are shockingly racist and bad. Mike Reed is shocking. But then you had the anarchic, the Comedy Store, the original Comedy Store group. Yeah. Your Alexei Sales and that. And they were the anti-establishment people. But now they have become pro-establishment. I find it bizarre, and I think it's a conspiracy. I don't think it's an accident. I think it's by design. The big money people, your Pfizers, your whoever, your Lockheed Martins, they basically bought and paid for the media.
Yeah. Well, what happened was I read a study in I think it's the British Medical Journal. Her name was Brooke Jackson, I think. She worked for Ventavius Research Group, and she tested some of the jabs for Pfizer. Yeah. Look this up, by the way, British Medical Journal. And she found many anomalies, like the people doing the testing weren't being trained properly. Yeah. There are many anomalies with the data, but Pfizer ignored this. So did the Food and Drugs Agency, and they ended up sacking her. And they ended up producing a vaccine. So some of this isn't conspiracy theory. No. Some of this is, if not conspiracy, it's definitely malpractice on the behalf of big corporations who just want to make a profit.
Do you find this right? Because I've come out quite recent again, and I've been because when I knew I was going to speak to you today, I've been thinking about how you were sort of like, I was the same way of thinking as you, not the same, but similar on certain issues. But I felt I had to be careful, and that's sort of like when I come up with the question about, I didn't want to be labelled as a far right. But do you find that when you talk to someone, this infuriates me as someone that, and again, I don't like to preach conspiracy theories or give my diagnosis. I like to ask questions. But people move the goalposts. So like you just said that thing about in the BMJ about the vaccine, and you'll say that, and someone will go, oh yeah, that's not true. And then you might send them a link to the actual, and they go, well, yeah, okay, that's true, but the world's not run by lizards. You're like, what the fuck? Like, do you find that people are constantly shifting just because they don't want to admit, they don't want to question the status quo?
They're two different things. They're just completely two different things. As I said, focus on each individual issue separately. You talk about the right wing and the freedom of speech is interesting. I think at the end of the day, we're all hypocrites to a certain extent. So if you go on GB News or if you talk about Ben Shapiro, you can talk about anything you want. But if it's a subject that's going to affect them, like with Ben Shapiro, I think he got rid of Candace Owens, who's talking about Israel.
The Christ is King statement.
Yeah.
He
was talking about Israel and he didn't like that. So I think we've all got our sensibilities. You can talk about what you want, but as soon as it affects you or your bottom line, then maybe there isn't that much freedom of speech there. So but definitely I agree with you, the conspiracies. They're two separate things.
Yeah, they are two separate things, but people, that's the thing. So, okay, we can use what's happened with the far right and Keir Starmer, the criticism. People will level at Keir Starmer. His speeches, I don't think he's handled the social unrest very well. But he has come out, and what is levelled at him is he is just labelling everything as far right. Because far right is an awful thing to be. I certainly have curtailed my beliefs, not even right-wing beliefs. Like I say, the one that does my head in is how the fuck is climate change left or right? What are the facts about the fucking weather going hotter or colder? How the fuck is that politicised? Do you know what I mean? That's data.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think Jimmy Carr talks about, you talk about that specific Chris Rock bit where he says you can be left-wing on certain issues and right-wing on other issues.
Yeah.
So people think there needs to be, not everyone's completely left-wing and not everyone's completely right-wing.
But why? But do you think that's just a social media thing where it's polarised and interactions and arguments good for business? So we're being sort of encouraged to... Did you hear that thing about during Occupy Wall Street? Occupy Wall Street happened, and it sort of carried on happening.
2011-ish, yeah.
Yeah, so it carried on happening. It didn't sort of dissipate. Normally, people would go crazy for a week or two, and then, like what's happened recently here in the UK with the riots, was it Southport since then? They just sort of like die out, as they did for the Mark Duggan ones or whatever. They sort of just die out. But the Occupy Wall Street didn't show any signs of slowing down. And I heard someone say on a podcast that if you go on the New York Times, you can Google when words appear, or you can look. And apparently words like racist, transphobic, homophobic, all these words really increased around the time of Occupy Wall Street. Because what the theory is they looked at the people coming together against the 1%, and the 1%
100%.
started to ramp up all of these disagreements and petty little differences to dissipate and divide and conquer the populace.
It's classic divide and conquer. And whatever you think about woke culture, there is someone out there, maybe it's the corporations, I think, and the government, but it's partly the right wing as well, but also the left wing, using this to divide and conquer us. So we can't come together. I mean, the best thing I heard recently was the second victim of white supremacy is white people. So white working class people can't lock arms with brown people.
Yeah, that's what they don't want.
And that's the same thing with the woke culture thing as well. Yeah. Obviously, none of us are transphobic and so forth. But what we got to do is we got to tell someone that this is not the way it is, and we have more. My main theme of my Edinburgh show is we have more in common than what divides us. It's silly to argue over little things. I'm not saying the little things for the people, but yeah,
it's silly. It's silly, but do you not think it's completely engineered? I mean, that's the biggest conspiracy.
It surprise me.
Yeah, I think it must be. But anyway, getting back to my point, I guess. So what has happened with labelling certain things far right to keep you well away from it? Like, I don't want to go on a anti-lockdown march because I don't want to be labelled as right-wing. I think that's also happening with the right. What the fuck was I going to say? Anyway, there was something else you mentioned. I was like, I think this conspiracy theories. People do that with conspiracy theorists. So people will go, Joe Rogan thinks that, obviously the famous one where he was taking horse dewormer, and it's like,
yeah,
no, ivermectin's like a
Yeah,
prize-winning drug been took by billions of people for all sorts of things, and it turns out it was effective. And then you get that Cuomo come out, and I don't like to use buzz terms because I think they're very sort of like dating, but the gaslighting going on since 100%. COVID, it's actually like, it's so brazen. I kind of admire it in a way.
the weirdest thing I found out about COVID. By the way, the one thing that is interesting, I know we're skipping, but when you're going about the Wall Street, they start using those terms in after Occupy.
Or they went up like 3,000%, certainly.
That is, I'm going to look into that. That is very, because that's when we're the most, because that's when austerity was quite big, just after the financial crash.
Which was engineered.
Yeah, they reckon it's engineered by banks and stuff.
Of course it is.
There's loads of people who made money out of it.
Yeah.
But the thing about the COVID one was, the one I was looking into before this was midazolam.
Right.
It's a sedative that was apparently used in loads of old people. Now I need to look more into this. This is not fact, but that was used in old people. Matt Hancock administered it, or the government at the time, for old people, and there's a reason why so many old people died. So I think it's worth looking into these things. You know,
well, the thing I heard about COVID, slightly different, is the thing what killed most people, them ventilators. I mean, I've heard that once you're on them, you're fucked.
Yeah. That's what I heard as well.
Yeah. So anyway, we are skipping around, but that's what I'm like. You've got ADHD. Well, you're diagnosed ADHD. I am definitely. If I'm not ADHD, I'm certainly getting there. So, what would you say if you had if you met a stranger, you're trapped in an elevator for 10 hours, and you just for some reason you wanted to convince them of one lesser I'm not going to use the term conspiracy theory, one lesser held belief. What is the one that you think you've got the best argument for? The one that you could present the best case for? What is the one that you really believe's nailed on?
Well, this was on the BBC website. It was confirmed a few years ago. It was confirmed in the 2000s. In 1953, there was a coup of the Iranian leader, Mohammad Mossadegh.
Right.
He became power in Iran in 1951 because he wanted, and one of the first things he did was nationalize the oil supply. And obviously the CIA didn't like this. Look on the BBC website. So they started engineering a coup with the help of British intelligence. So they put stories in Iranian and US media to say that Mohammad Mossadegh was not a good guy. And once they got rid of him, they took control of the oil supply, which is now known as BP. And they used the money to fund the rebuild of post-war America and Britain. So, yeah. So, and if you take a look at that, there's been many times where the CIA have been involved in coups around the world. There's one with Nicky Agnew, when a film called Kill the Messenger with Jeremy Renner, so check that out. I think it's Operation Onwards. Right. So that's the one thing I'd say that's verifiable.
Like it sounds there that, like I say, all your ducks in a row, it's A to B to C, all factual events. But that is the classic deep state or the nefarious, they smear people. I heard, and I don't know, this is the thing, I worry about offending people because I don't know much about politics in the Middle East. I heard that Gaddafi was like a really popular...
That's why...
good leader, and we've just been told was it Saddam? One of them, and they were like, oh no, the people loved him.
Yeah, I heard that he wanted a gold dinner, where he wanted a national currency based on gold for Africa. He was great to those citizens and stuff like that. And they say that some of the stuff he did was untrue. So, and we've made that country a million times worse. They've got slaves in that country.
Yeah, well, so, and again, as the one you brought up, I mean, someone who's, this might be a strange conspiracy, and this is not one that I've done any research on. This is the thing about me, Don. I just think a lot of them and I don't look them up. I don't want to know if they're, because I'd rather be wrong than boring. I think that's bleed. But I think that oil I don't believe oil is what they tell us. They say it's old fucking decomposed dinosaur bollocks. There's just too much of it. I think that we've got unlimited oil. I just think it's just what comes out of the ground, like blood comes out of the body. I don't know how insane that sounds. But if you think how insane it's like, all this old vegetation from millions of years ago, and there's like fucking loads of it. Think everything runs on it. And the other thing is they go, we're running out. I'm like, how do you know we're running out? Have you dug everywhere? Like they could go,
that's true.
How do you know? You haven't gone to it. This Antarctica thing is a whole subject for another episode, because I think that's insane that we can't agree on anything apart from everyone's got together and gone, we're going to have the Antarctic Treaty and no one's going to put dibs on it. But that could just be like constant fucking oil under there, like unlimited. So I think oil's replenishing. Yeah. But anyway,
I'd go one step further. There's another conspiracy that maybe there's this thing, as Nicholas Tesla's talking about, free energy.
Yeah.
There's this guy called Stanley Myers who managed to invent a car powered by water.
Yeah.
And
what happened to him, Don?
Yeah, he got investors in, and they had a meal with investors, and he was poisoned. And
Yeah.
I think one of his last words is, "I've been poisoned" or something.
Yeah.
So it's very weird when you see all these people trying to create something which is different to the fossil fuels,
Yeah.
and suddenly they've been murdered or suicided. So I don't think these are conspiracies. I think there's obviously, if you go against the establishment, something might happen to you. So
No, 100%.
all I'm trying to say is this is our last podcast, and then we'll get bumped off.
Yeah, the thing was so small, and no one knows who the fuck, or certainly I am, that I think while I can get away with it, I'm going to get away with it. But it's funny because did you hear that one of, like, that's the thing. Like, so say, like, there's the gold that I always heard when I was a kid, there's a mountain of gold, and they're like, they've got all this gold, and they don't release it because if they did, the value of gold would go down because the supply and demand. Same with oil. If they just said oil's like the water, like, you don't know, right? I don't know. That maybe oil goes up, you burn it, it goes up in the atmosphere, and it somehow comes back down and turns back into oil somehow, like water does, right? I don't know, it doesn't do that. But if it did do that, they certainly wouldn't fucking tell you that, because they charge you through the fucking nose for it. It's all that money, isn't it?
There's loads of things they won't tell you, but again, I'm not an expert, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you just take things at blind faith. So, but it'd be interesting to find out about, not about oil, but just some of these things. It'd be interesting to get an expert in and just the thing.
If that's your conspiracy that you totally believe in, that I used the C word, I didn't mean to, but if that's the sort of like, is there one that you're sort of like, not ashamed of as such, but is there one that you're sort of like, oh, that's a bit out there even for me, but there's something in that interests you? Is there one that you're sort of like a little bit loath to admit?
I don't think there is.
See, that could be your Asperger's. Do you know what I mean? That could be the fact that you don't know how other people might judge your thoughts.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, I have questioned in the past 9/11.
Oh, that's a big one for me. I think that's nailed on.
Same here. I'm not sure. Well, I still got questions about it. I'm not sure. But the weirdest thing you should ever see about 9/11 is Rick Mail.
Yeah.
Rick Mail had a film called One by One.
Right.
And it's the weirdest film you'll ever see. It's about him and his friends talking about population control and 9/11 conspiracies. It was just before he died, and it was filmed in 2014, so it's worth checking out. That guy was a massive, I don't like to use the word conspiracy theorist.
We need a new word. We need a new term, don't we? I don't like truther, because that implies that the other people are wrong, and again, I don't want to insinuate that. Like, for example, if we're of different faiths growing up, I wouldn't want to insinuate that your faith's wrong and mine's correct. But I respect you. I respect other people's beliefs. Do you find that respect is a one-way street? Have you ever come across real people being basically cunts because of things you've said or believe?
Yeah, on Facebook and stuff like that, people have groaned at me for going to anti-lockdown protests, having certain beliefs, and like saying that there's far right, but I tell them that there's a load of Black and Asian people who turned up there. But
that doesn't fit their narrative, though, does it? That they're the good guys and not only the bad guys, the right wings would go on that. That doesn't fit their narrative.
No, but the thing is, we haven't done, like, when you're talking about, you haven't done any research. But you said what to call it other than conspiracy theory. Once we've done our research and we get people involved, I don't think the term should be conspiracy theorist. I think the term should be investigative journalist.
Yeah, that is what it is. I'm just questioner. I like, and
question.
Yeah, but I think that I've had things. I know, obviously, the lockdown one. Why do you think people are so upset about that? But there's a quote, and I maybe overuse it. You haven't heard me use it, so it'll be, but the Thomas Sewell quote, which I think's amazing, where he says, "People will forgive you for being wrong, rather than forgive you for being right. If admitting you're right proves they're wrong." I've fucked it up.
Yeah,
that's how amazing the quote is. I don't even know it. But do you think that when people, we all locked down and it was painful, and we're all paying for it now, and they talk about this and that, and this, all these austerity things is to pay back that fucking money, right? We're not stupid. The government don't give away free money. But do you think that they feel, because they feel lied to and betrayed by their government and the people that they've put their faith in, if someone like you and I comes along and goes, whoa, do you think that was all a load of bollocks? They get angry at us, because they'd rather get angry at us for being lunatics than admit that their belief system's built on thin ice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's times with conspiracy theories where I've been wrong. So maybe they could be wrong as well sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's as George Carlin said, I don't know what he said exactly, but it's not believable that people come together and conclude and have, and decide things beforehand. I didn't say that, but he said something similar. So it's not conceivable that big groups of people come together. Maybe not officially, but
I think what's all of these things. What's unbelievable is that when you've got billions of dollars involved in something, right? That the people that are making all that money go, oh, let's just do everything fairly and see the chips fall where they may, like the industrial military complex. Of course they're going to protect their interests. Like the upward transfer of wealth during this pandemic is the biggest in human history, and just people don't seem angry about it. I just find it bizarre.
When I go to Wimbledon where I lived, all the high street shops are closed. And only companies like Amazon, it's not conspiracy as such, it's just business as usual. And it's getting horrific because power has been more centralized, and what we need is a bottom-up movement. Not that way of saying it, but a bottom-up movement.
Well, do you think that's what they might have been fearful that was starting to happen at Occupy Wall Street? So that's why we've now become so. Now it's culture wars. That's what they've got us all involved in.
Yeah, I think it's a smokescreen, and it's not just Occupy movement. I think it's with Jeremy Corbyn as well. They tried to call him every name under the book. It wasn't perfect, but they're using that to smear you. They'll smear you, especially on the left, I think, as well.
If you start to look at the people that have been smeared, and I'm not excusing, I'm not saying whether I believe any of these people are good or bad guys, and I'm not saying whether they get, but you got Russell Brand, Julian Assange, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn. Once you start saying things, Donald Trump. Once you start saying things that don't. My camera's just gone off. You got a show on Thursday, have I got that right?
Yeah, I'm doing a show on Thursday called The Revolution Will Be Disorganised. It's the first time I've done my Edinburgh show in London.
Right.
So I'll be talking a bit about conspiracy theories there.
And where's that going to be performed?
That's going to be the Whip Space in Wandsworth. So if you want to come down, it's free to... It's this Thursday on the 5th of September. But if this goes out after that, just look around for my website.
I'll try and stick this out before that. So I've got you on the socials. Is it at Don BISWAS Comedy?
Yeah, at Don BISWAS Comedy on the socials. And
do you get conspiratorial on that Twitter and that, or?
Not as much as I used to. I was speaking to I won't mention his name, a fellow comic who got quite conspiratorial during the lockdown because whatever happened, it fucked with us mentally.
Yeah.
The lockdown, and I think he lost a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, but he's a fantastic comedian. So sometimes I try and let the comedy do the talking.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get angry and I'll speak about a subject like austerity and stuff like that. But if I can make the subject funny through comedy, I'll do it that way instead.
Can I just say, I know I don't want to sound like a broken record because we probably already touched on this. It is insane to me as a man of basically 50 that comedians are the ones that are scared to talk about. It just seems like a complete flip. Do you know what I mean? The comedians are the establishment now, and I think that's dangerous.
Well, what's happened is my friend Angus Lindsay, we're doing our third, well, it's mainly his work, or all his work, Palestinian Benefit.
Right.
And there was this really huge superstar comedian, I won't mention his name, he couldn't do it because he's worried of the way it will affect him.
Yeah.
But this person... they are like a massive comedian, millionaires. I mean, if they can't talk about it, what chance is there? I mean, you and me are talking about it, and the fact is, like, no disrespect to myself or you, we're very small on the circuit. We could lose our work like that.
Yeah.
And the worst thing about it, we're talking about. I'm no fan of Russell Brand earlier. I think
no, me neither.
Those allegations have the truth. But we often gossip on the circuit about other comedians who've done misdemeanors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just talking words. That's all we're doing. And none of us are bigoted, racist, or anything like that. And we'll probably get more trouble for having opinions that might be slightly different from the rest of the circuit. And then you've got people out there who are actually doing misdemeanors. You know?
Yeah, I think it's better the devil you know. I think that when you create any sort of factions of society where people feel they've got to obfuscate or hide their beliefs, I think that's when things can fester and grow and get mutated into more harmful things. I think we should be allowed to say what we think as long as you're not a twat about it and say, I think I want to ask this about 9/11. I want to ask. Climate change does my head in. I'm not a denier or a believer. I just find the fact that anyone that wants to have that conversation is automatically a right-wing penis. It's not. I don't want BP to win. Like, why do you think I want to ask? Like, I'm not trying. I'm like, oh, let's just fucking let's just pump loads of oil into the ponds and drown all the otters and swans. I don't want to do that. It's just I look at the data and I saw this thing where it's like when they measured the hottest day ever, it was on a runway in Cambridgeshire where jet engines were taking off like 100 metres from the fucking apparatus. Did you see that?
Exactly.
It's just I want to know the truth. How hot is it? Is it getting hotter or not? To ask that is not political. Again, I've said that before.
You can ask questions, and that's the thing. A lot of people, I think they're at least we're out there telling our views in public. And I don't think many people will do that in case they're afraid of losing work.
So one last question. Do you think that since COVID that more people are coming around to this way of thinking, or do you think that people like myself are now starting to be a little bit less squeamish about admitting it? So do you think the investigative journalist faction is growing, or people are just becoming a little bit more sort of like vocal about it?
I think people have just come back to normal, really. I don't think much has changed, really.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. Again, we might have different experiences. Like I said, and I'm ashamed to admit it, but it is the truth. I find that because of that right wing, Joe Rogan, right? So many people use him as like, and they say like working out's right wing. Bro science. It's such a fucking a sort of like dismissive way to label you as like
people. I listen to Joe Rogan.
But just used against like he's a brogan. It's just sort of like I'm sort of embarrassed like to go, oh yeah, I sort of do like working out, and I do sort of like MMA. That's how I first discovered. I saw Joe Rogan through the UFC before I knew about his podcast, and
exactly. He's got left wing guests. He's got right wing guests. You know,
I find him quite a right wing person. Sorry, I completely misspoke there. I find him quite a left wing libertarian person. The libertarian, that's the thing. The word libertarian in America, they've mutated lately, haven't they, to mean something else?
But the problem with libertarians, I disagree with them and the government. But the thing I like about them, I think you have people like Ron Paul. They're against they're against erosion of civil liberties, and they're against illegal wars in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so, if you question something that the neoliberal establishment doesn't like, either you'll get assassinated, someone like Joe Rogan, your character will get assassinated, or you yourself will get assassinated, like JFK.
Or Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. It's like the neoliberal. I'm not a fan of Trump, but there's two establishments for you. There's a neoliberal establishment, and there's like the Nigel Farage and Donald Trump. I'm not a big fan of. I think some of the people within that movement, I prefer people like Ron Paul who are questioning things. I think the Democrats and Republicans are the same side of the. I don't know what the term is, but the same side of the same coin.
Two wings of the same bird.
Yeah, pretty much.
I
think they're both neoliberal establishments who favour the top 1%, you know, and I don't think we should be voting for all of them. If it was for me, I'd be voting for Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate in America.
Yeah.
But as soon as you talk about Joe Rogan and people of that ilk, they think.
I'm saying as a blokey bloke, white bloke, I worry about getting typecast. Not that's like the success for him, but like, oh, you're just a brogan. It's like, no, I'm actually not. I'm just not. I don't. Like I said, I've always questioned things. I mean, everything, stupid little things. I don't like people that just accept things without questioning and then start forcing on other people. Anyway, Don, thank you so much for joining us.
I'll just say one more thing.
Go on, you say whatever you want, man. You finish up.
Yeah, the thing I'd say is, don't give a shit what other people tell you. Don't give a shit. The biggest fear you have is what other people think of us. You shouldn't really care what other people think of you. Once you are in that space, and I still care what other people think of you, but once you're in that space where you don't care what other people think of you, then it's quite a freeing experience.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I totally agree with you. It's like one of those things. If someone says, "Oh, eat less and go to the gym," everyone knows you should do it, but it's actually doing it is a different matter. It can be quite daunting. But that's what I said. One of you on here is my first guest. You were one of the first people that I met you and you just dropped in the conversation. I mean, you also a bit tongue in cheek, poking fun at yourself. You've done Edinburgh promo shots with a tinfoil hat on and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
that
so
was Conspiracy Theorist. My show was called back in 2017.
Exactly.
Left
so
Conspiracy Theorist with Dyspraxia to be.
Again, playing with that image that other people would have at you. But look, you're a free thinker. Keep fighting the good fight, my man. And thanks for joining me.
Likewise.
All right. Cheers,
Cheers.
Tom.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.